You don't look like the kind of woman who belongs in a place like this, especially alone. Officer Wade Brenner blocked the exit, badge flashing like a threat. Relax, he smirked. Just making sure you're not trouble. His partner laughed, fingers grazing Renee Lawson's arm. ID, now! Or we do this the hard way. Renee didn't move, didn't blink. The bar fell quiet. He leaned in, smug. Rules exist for someone like you. Renee didn't rise. Hands rested flat on the bar. Stillness, trained, deliberate, settled over her shoulders as laughter thinned, and glasses stopped clinking. Neither officer noticed the discipline in her posture, or the fact they were cornering the one person in the room who could end their careers. Before continuing, comment where in the world you are watching from, and make sure to subscribe, because tomorrow's story is one you can't miss. The neon beer signs cast a dim glow across Harbor Tap's wooden bar top. Renee Lawson hunched slightly in her gray hoodie, letting the fabric shield her face as she claimed the corner stool. After 14 hours reviewing misconduct files, she needed this moment of invisibility. Tessa Ward approached with a practiced smile, wiping her hands on a bar towel. "What can I get you?" "Just a draft beer, please." Renee kept her voice low, matching the muted conversations around her. The bartender nodded and returned with a cold glass. Renee wrapped her fingers around it, watching condensation bead on the surface. The usual Friday crowd filled most tables, couples on dates, friends unwinding after work, regulars who knew each other's stories. Normal people living normal lives. She took a slow sip, letting the tension in her shoulders ease. The front door swung open hard enough to rattle the glass. Two uniformed officers burst in, their laughter drowning out the classic rock playing overhead. Officer Wade Brenner led the way, his badge catching the light as he scanned the room like he owned it. Officer Cole Fitch followed, mimicking Brenner's swagger. Renee kept her eyes on her glass, but she felt their attention lock onto her immediately. Her spine stiffened as their boots scraped closer across the wooden floor. "Well, what do we have here?" Brenner's voice carried deliberately across the bar. "Someone looking awful, lost and lonely." Fitch snickered. "Yeah, this ain't exactly your usual neighborhood spot, is it?" The surrounding conversations dimmed. Renee took another careful sip, keeping her movements measured. "Just having a quiet drink, officers." "Quiet drink?" Brenner leaned against the bar, too close to her space. "All by yourself? That's kind of suspicious, don't you think, Fitch?" "Real suspicious," Fitch agreed, positioning himself on her other side. "This establishment has standards, you know. Got to make sure everyone belongs." Behind the bar, Tessa glanced between them uncertainly, then grabbed a cloth and moved to wipe down the far end. Other patrons suddenly found their phones fascinating. "I'm not looking for any trouble," Renee said evenly. "Just finishing my beer and heading home." Brenner's laugh had an ugly edge. "Trouble? Who said anything about trouble? We're just being friendly, doing our job, making sure everyone's safe." He dragged out the word safe like a threat. "Where are you coming from, anyway?" Fitch pressed. "Don't think I've seen you around here before." "Work," Renee answered simply. She could feel her pulse in her throat, but kept her face neutral. "Oh, yeah? Where's that?" Brenner shifted closer, alcohol heavy on his breath. "Because this is our beat, and we know all the regulars. Don't we, Fitch?" "Sure do." Fitch's smirk widened. "Every single one." Renee took another slow sip. "I appreciate your dedication to the neighborhood, officers, but I'd prefer to drink in peace." "Peace?" Brenner's tone sharpened. "You trying to tell us how to do our jobs? Because it sounds like you might be getting a little disorderly." The threat hung in the air. A few patrons gathered their things, leaving cash on their tables as they slipped toward the door. "Nothing disorderly here," Renee said quietly. "Just a person having a drink after work." "See, that's the thing," Fitch drawled. "You keep saying work. but won't say where. Makes a person wonder what you're hiding. Brenner nodded. Might need to see some ID. Make sure everything checks out. I have ID, Renee said. But I'd like to know the specific reason you're asking. The reason? Brenner's laugh was sharp. The reason is, I said so. That good enough for you? Tessa had drifted back, hovering nervously nearby. Officers? She hasn't caused any problems. Did anyone ask you? Brenner snapped, making the bartender flinch back. Renee felt her jaw tighten, but kept her voice steady. There's no need for that tone. No need for what tone? Fitch stepped closer. Seems like you've got a real attitude problem. Maybe we should step outside, Brenner suggested, his hand resting meaningfully on his belt. Have a proper conversation about respect. The remaining patrons were openly staring now, but no one moved to help. Renee recognized the familiar weight of isolation settling over her shoulders. She'd seen it countless times in complaint files, the moments before power was abused, when witnesses chose safety over intervention. Brenner grabbed an empty stool, dragging it across the floor with a screech. He planted it directly beside Renee, blocking her path to the door. The message was clear. She wasn't going anywhere until they decided she could. So, he said, settling onto the stool with exaggerated patience, let's start over. Who are you, and what exactly brings you to our neighborhood tonight? Brenner's cologne filled the space between them, sharp and invasive. He leaned forward, resting one elbow on the bar, while his other hand drummed against his utility belt. His smile stretched wide, all teeth and no warmth. Come on now, he said, voice dripping with false concern. We're just trying to keep everyone safe. That's what good cops do, right? Fitch moved closer on Renee's other side, his uniform sleeve brushing against her arm. When she instinctively pulled away, his smirk deepened. Awful jumpy, aren't you? I'd appreciate some personal space. Officers? Renee kept her tone measured, professional. The same voice she used in countless volatile situations. There's no need to crowd me. A few seats down, a middle-aged couple exchanged uncomfortable glances before gathering their things. The woman caught Renee's eye for a moment, then quickly looked away as they hurried toward the door. Touchy, touchy, Brenner chuckled, shifting even closer. That's not very friendly. We're just doing our job, making conversation. Unless you've got something to hide? No one's hiding anything, Renee said. I'm simply having a drink and would like some space. Fitch's hand landed on the bar next to her glass. You know what would clear this all up real quick? Some ID? Just to be safe. Standard procedure when someone seems out of place. The implied meaning hung heavy in the air. Renee felt familiar heat rise in her chest, but kept her expression neutral. I haven't broken any laws or given you probable cause. There's no requirement for me to show identification. Behind the bar, Tessa wrung her hands around a dish towel. She opened her mouth, then closed it, eyes darting between the officers and the management reserves the right to refuse service sign above the liquor bottles. See? That right there? Brenner's smile faded slightly. That's the kind of attitude that causes problems. We're trying to be reasonable here, but you're making it difficult. Nothing difficult about it, Renee replied. I'm exercising my rights peacefully. Rights? Fitch scoffed. People like you always think you know all about rights. Always trying to talk your way out of basic cooperation. People like me? Renee turned slightly, meeting his gaze directly. What exactly do you mean by that, Officer Fitch? He faltered for a moment before recovering his sneer. You know exactly what I mean. The types who come in here causing trouble, thinking they're above the law. Nobody's above the law, Brenner added, his tone hardening. And right now, you're starting to look like someone who might be disturbing the peace. The remaining patrons at nearby tables stared intently at their phones or drinks, carefully avoiding the scene unfolding before them. The music overhead seemed to fade against the tension filling the room. I haven't disturbed anything, Renee said quietly. I'm sitting here, speaking calmly and requesting reasonable space. Oh, we'll decide what's reasonable, Brenner replied, his knee pressed against her stool. And right now, your attitude is making me concerned about officer safety. Tessa finally stepped forward, her voice wavering slightly. Officers, really? She hasn't done anything. Did anyone ask for your input? Brenner snapped without looking away from Renee. Maybe you should focus on your job instead of interfering with police business. The bartender retreated, face flushing. A muscle twitched in Renee's jaw, but she maintained her composure. There's no need to speak to her that way, Renee said. She's just doing her job, same as you claim to be doing. Claim to be doing? Fitch's voice rose. You questioning our professionalism now? I'm questioning your behavior, Renee replied evenly. And your justification for harassing a patron who's done nothing wrong. Harassing? Brenner laughed, but his eyes went cold. Nobody's harassing anyone. But if you keep making a scene, we might have to take this conversation somewhere more private. For everyone's safety, of course. Is that a threat, Officer Brenner? That's a professional courtesy, he said, smile gone entirely now. One you're choosing not to appreciate. Some people just can't help making things harder than they need to be. Some people just can't help thinking rules don't apply to them, Fitch added. Always got to push back. Always got to resist simple requests. Renee sat perfectly still, watching their reflections in the mirror behind the bar. Watching how they positioned themselves to block her exit. Watching the calculated escalation she'd seen in countless complaint reports. I'm not resisting anything, she said. I'm asserting my rights calmly and clearly. Rights this, rights that, Brenner muttered. Getting real tired of this attitude. Fitch straightened up, touching the radio on his shoulder. His voice took on a bored, routine tone as he keyed the mic. Dispatch, stand by, might have an issue. The radio static cut through the bar's nervous silence. A few remaining patrons shifted in their seats, sensing the growing tension. Tessa busied herself wiping already clean glasses, her movements jerky and uncertain. Renee drew a steady breath, choosing her next words carefully. Years of training and experience had taught her the delicate balance required in moments like these. Officers, I need to inform you that I'm law enforcement. The statement hung in the air for a heartbeat. Around the bar, shoulders began to relax slightly. A collective exhale as people anticipated the tension dissolving. Even Tessa's anxious movements paused, hope flickering across her face. That hope shattered as Brenner's laugh boomed through the room, sharp and mocking. Fitch joined in, their combined amusement echoing off the walls like a taunt. Oh, that's rich. Brenner wiped at his eyes, theatrically overplaying his reaction. Did you hear that, Fitch? She says she's law enforcement. Yeah, I heard it. Fitch's grin turned predatory. You know that's a serious crime, right? Impersonating a police officer? Renee maintained her composed demeanor, though she noted how they'd positioned themselves, Brenner still blocking her left side, Fitch hovering too close on her right. I'm stating a fact. I'm a law enforcement officer, and I'm requesting a supervisor. Are you serious right now? Brenner's expression shifted, amusement giving way to something darker. You really want to keep pushing this story? It's not a story, Renee said. I'm off duty, which is why my credentials are secured in my vehicle. Convenient, Fitch muttered, taking a step behind her stool. His presence loomed over her shoulder, close enough that she could feel the heat radiating from his uniform. The move effectively boxed her in against the bar, leaving no clean exit route. Brenner raised his voice slightly, projecting to the room while maintaining eye contact with Renee. Ma'am, you're being uncooperative with a routine investigation. We've asked for simple identification, which you've refused. Now, you're making false claims about being law enforcement. The trap was familiar, Renee had seen it constructed countless times in complaint reports. The careful language, the public performance, the slow building of a narrative that would justify whatever came next. If she pushed back now, she'd be labeled aggressive and combative. If she stayed quiet, her silence would be taken as admission of guilt. "I've been nothing but cooperative," Renee said evenly. "I've answered your questions calmly and clearly stated my position." "Your position?" Fitch scoffed behind her. "Your position is making false statements to police officers. That's a criminal offense." A woman at a nearby table gathered her purse, quickly dropping cash on the table before hurrying toward the exit. Her departure seemed to trigger others, and soon several more patrons were making their way to the door, leaving half-finished drinks behind. "Look at that," Brenner said, gesturing at the departing customers. "Now you're disturbing business, making people uncomfortable, creating a hostile environment." "The only hostility here is coming from you," Renee replied, keeping her voice steady despite the growing pressure of the situation. "That sounds like an accusation against officers performing their duties," Fitch said. His belt buckle clinked against the back of her stool as he leaned closer. "You really want to add that to your problems?" Tessa stepped forward again, wringing her hands. "Officers, please!" "Stay out of this," Brenner snapped. "Unless you want to be charged with interfering with police business?" The bartender backed away, face pale. Renee felt her jaw tighten at the threat, but she forced her expression to remain neutral. "There's no need for threats," she said. "We can resolve this professionally." "Professional?" Brenner's laugh was harsh now, stripped of its earlier artificial humor. "Nothing professional about lying to officers and refusing to comply with lawful commands. Making up stories about being a cop," Fitch added, his breath hot against her ear. "That's going to cost you." The radio at Brenner's shoulder crackled again, and he keyed the mic without taking his eyes off Renee. "Dispatch. We're going to need another unit at Harbor Tap. Got a subject being uncooperative, claiming to be law enforcement." The dispatcher's response was lost under the scraping of Brenner's boots as he took a half-step closer, using his height to loom over Renee. His smile had transformed completely now, becoming something hard and mean that never reached his eyes. "Last chance to come clean," he said, voice low and threatening. "Tell us who you really are, and maybe we can work something out." "I've already told you who I am," Renee replied. "Wrong answer." Brenner's hand dropped to his belt as he jerked his head toward the door. "Outside." Now. The heavy door of Harbor Tap closed behind them with a dull thud. The cold night air hit Renee's face, sharp and sobering. Music from the bar filtered out onto the street, muffled now. A stark contrast to the tense scene unfolding beneath the yellow glow of the streetlight. Brenner's hand gripped Renee's upper arm, steering her toward their patrol car with practiced authority. Each step felt choreographed, deliberate, a performance he'd given many times before. Fitch trailed close behind, his footsteps echoing on the concrete, playing his part as the ever-vigilant backup. "Spread your legs, hands on the hood," Brenner commanded, loud enough for the small crowd beginning to gather. He positioned her directly under the streetlight, making sure she was clearly visible to anyone passing by. Renee kept her voice level, despite the growing knot of anger in her chest. "I'm requesting a supervisor again. I'm Captain Renee Lawson, 3rd Precinct." Brenner answered by clicking on his flashlight, shining it directly into her eyes. The harsh beam made her squint, but she refused to look away. "Yeah, and I'm the police commissioner," he sneered, projecting his voice like he was performing for the growing audience. "Now, hands on the hood before we add resisting to your charges." The metal of the patrol car felt ice-cold under Renee's palms. She could see her breath forming clouds in the beam of Brenner's flashlight as he continued his theatrical narration. "Subject claims to be law enforcement but can't produce credentials," he announced to no one in particular. "Displaying suspicious behavior, refusing to comply with simple commands. A young man stepped forward from the gathering crowd, phone raised to record. Fitch moved with surprising speed, knocking the device from his hands. It clattered across the sidewalk. "Back up! Anyone interfering with police business will be arrested," Fitch barked, squaring his shoulders. "That includes filming." "That's not accurate," Renee said clearly, knowing others were still recording from a safer distance. "Citizens have the right to film police interactions in public spaces." Brenner's response was to begin an unnecessarily aggressive pat-down. His hands were rough, invasive, lingering too long in places they shouldn't. "Oh, now you're a legal expert too?" He laughed, making sure his voice carried. "First a captain, now a lawyer. What's next?" The search continued, methodical in its humiliation. Renee focused on her breathing, in through her nose, out through her mouth. She'd seen this routine from the other side countless times. The public spectacle, the performative dominance, the steady erosion of dignity dressed up as procedure. "Nothing here," Brenner announced, stepping back. "No weapon, no badge, no credentials. Just another faker trying to play cop in places she doesn't belong." The emphasis he placed on those last words made their true meaning clear. Renee noticed Tessa standing in the doorway of the bar, her face pale in the streetlight. The bartender's hands were clenched at her sides, her expression torn between wanting to help and fearing retaliation. More people had gathered now, forming a loose semicircle around the scene. Some held phones high, recording from what they hoped was a safe distance. Others whispered among themselves, their faces showing concern, disgust, resignation, but no one stepped forward. No one interfered. They'd all seen this movie before, and they knew how it ended. Brenner circled around Renee like a shark, his boots scraping against the pavement. "You know what I think?" He was playing to the crowd again. "I think someone's been watching too many cop shows. Thought she could come in here, throw around some fancy titles, maybe get special treatment. The only people seeking special treatment here are you and Officer Fitch," Renee replied, her voice carrying clearly through the night air. She kept her hands visible on the hood, her posture relaxed despite the tension thrumming through her body. "Still running that mouth," Fitch chimed in, moving closer. "Still making accusations against officers performing their duties." A car slowed as it passed, the driver craning their neck to watch. The crowd had grown larger, spilling off the sidewalk into the street. The air felt charged, like the moment before a storm breaks. "Last chance," Brenner said, leaning in close enough that only Renee could hear. "Drop the act, show some respect, and maybe we don't take this downtown." "I've shown nothing but respect," Renee answered, matching his quiet tone. "While you've violated multiple departmental procedures and civil rights in front of witnesses." The muscle in Brenner's jaw twitched. He straightened up, hand dropping to his handcuffs. "All right, that's it. You're—" The sudden wail of approaching sirens cut through the night, growing louder by the second. Red and blue lights began to strobe against the buildings, reflecting off windows and parked cars. Brenner's smile returned, sharp and satisfied, like this had been the plan all along. Multiple units were approaching fast, far more backup than a simple bar disturbance would normally warrant. Renee could hear the distinctive sound of several engines, the synchronized sirens suggesting a coordinated response. The crowd shifted uneasily as the first patrol car rounded the corner, lights flashing. More sirens echoed in the distance, getting closer. This wasn't spontaneous assistance. This was a show of force that had been waiting in the wings. The first patrol car pulled up to the curb, its red and blue lights painting the gathered crowd in alternating colors. Sergeant Paula Hines stepped out, her face a mask of professional detachment as she took in the scene. A black woman spread against a patrol car, 2 officers hovering close, and a crowd of onlookers with phones raised. Hines approached with measured steps, her boots clicking against the pavement. "What's the situation here, officers?" "Possible 148, Sarge," Brenner said, straightening his posture. Subject was uncooperative, claiming to be law enforcement without credentials. Renee turned to face Hines, keeping her movements deliberate and calm. "I'm Police Captain Renee Lawson, 3rd Precinct. These officers have been harassing me since they entered Harbor Tap 20 minutes ago." The silence that followed was sharp enough to cut. Hines's expression flickered. Surprise, then concern, then something carefully neutral. She reached for her radio, pressing the transmit button with unusual precision. "Dispatch, this is Sergeant Hines. Can you confirm the duty status of Captain Renee Lawson, 3rd Precinct?" The response crackled through clearly, loud enough for everyone to hear. "Confirmed, Sergeant. Captain Lawson is currently off duty, but active command staff." The effect was immediate. Brenner's shoulders went rigid, his previous swagger evaporating like morning dew. Fitch took 2 quick steps back, suddenly finding intense interest in a crack on the sidewalk. The crowd's whispers grew louder, angry mutters mixing with shocked exclamations. "Jesus Christ!" someone in the crowd said. "They did all that to their own captain?" Hines's voice cut through the growing noise. "Officer Brenner, step back from Captain Lawson. Officer Fitch, hands off, now." Both officers complied instantly, but Renee noticed the calculated way they moved, like actors changing positions on a stage, already thinking about how to spin this scene differently. "Captain," Hines said, her voice dropping to something almost intimate, "I want to personally apologize for this misunderstanding. Perhaps we could discuss this somewhere more private? Handle it through proper channels?" Renee stayed where she was, making sure her voice carried. "What exactly was the misunderstanding, Sergeant? The part where your officers targeted me without cause, or the part where they conducted an illegal search in front of witnesses?" Hines stepped closer, lowering her voice further. "Captain, I understand you're upset, but for department optics, maybe we should address this internally? No need to air dirty laundry in public." Behind Hines, Brenner had started nodding, his face arranging itself into a mask of contrition that didn't reach his eyes. "Captain, if I'd known who you were, this was all about officer safety. You understand how it is, someone claiming to be law enforcement without credentials." "Officer safety," Renee repeated, letting the words hang in the air. "Was that before or after you made comments about people who don't belong here?" More patrol cars had arrived, creating a wall of flashing lights. Officers stood in loose clusters, watching the scene unfold with barely concealed interest. Renee could see the machinery of damage control already spinning up, the careful way Hines positioned herself between Renee and the crowd, the subtle signals passing between officers. "Captain," Hines tried again, "these are good officers. Maybe things got heated, but their records are clean. Let's not let one unfortunate incident damage careers unnecessarily." Renee noticed how Hines emphasized careers while avoiding words like misconduct or investigation. It was textbook minimization. She'd seen it countless times from the other side of the thin blue line. "Their records are clean," Renee said. "Or their records were cleaned." A muscle twitched in Hines's jaw. "That's a serious implication, Captain." "So is assaulting a superior officer," Renee countered. "So is violating civil rights under color of authority." Fitch had edged toward their patrol car, looking like he wanted to disappear inside it. But Brenner was different. As the conversation continued, his posture had begun to relax. His eyes darted between Hines and Renee, calculating, reading the subtext. "I'll need your badge numbers," Renee said. "Both of you." "Of course," Hines jumped in before either officer could respond. "We'll get you all the necessary information through proper channels." The emphasis on proper channels was clear. Internal affairs, closed-door meetings, carefully worded reports that would disappear into filing cabinets. The same system that had kept Brenner's record spotless, despite what Renee suspected were numerous similar incidents. Speaking of Brenner, he'd stopped trying to look contrite. A familiar smirk was creeping back onto his face as he watched Hines run interference. He knew the dance. How many times had he seen supervisors smooth things over, make problems disappear? "We should clear the scene," Hines announced, loud enough for the lingering crowd to hear. "No need to block traffic any longer." Brenner turned away, that damned smirk still playing at the corners of his mouth. He knew he wouldn't be wearing handcuffs tonight. Knew the system was already circling the wagons, preparing to protect its own. Even from someone like Renee, who should have had the authority to demand immediate accountability. Renee watched him walk away, noticed the spring returning to his step. She saw Fitch fall in beside him, their heads already together, probably planning how they'd write this up. Around them, other officers began returning to their vehicles, the lights clicking off one by one. The crowd was dispersing too, some still filming, others shaking their heads in disgust. But Renee remained still, absorbing every detail of this moment. She watched Brenner's confident stride, saw how quickly he'd gone from apologetic to arrogant once he realized the system would shield him. Renee sat in her parked car outside her apartment complex, the engine off, but her hands still gripping the steering wheel. The night wasn't cold, but she couldn't stop shaking. Every detail from Harbor Tap played on repeat in her mind like a horror movie. She couldn't pause. Brenner's smirk, Fitch's wandering hands during the search, Hines's careful words about proper channels, the way the crowd watched, helpless or unwilling to intervene. The bartender's frightened face in the doorway. "Record memo," Renee said, activating her phone. Her voice came out steady despite her trembling hands. "Friday, September 15th, approximately 2300 hours. Location: Harbor Tap, 1242, Marina Drive." She took a deep breath and began documenting everything while it was fresh. Officers Wade Brenner and Cole Fitch entered at approximately 22:45 hours. Initial contact made through unsolicited comments about my presence alone at the bar. Officer Brenner's first statement was, for 30 minutes, she detailed every word, every touch, every threat. She described how Brenner positioned himself to block her exit, how Fitch's hands lingered during the search, how they'd knocked phones from witnesses' hands. She noted the exact time Sergeant Hines arrived and her subsequent attempts to minimize the incident. "Multiple witnesses present," she continued. "Bartender Tessa Ward. Couple at corner table, middle-aged white male and female. Group of 3 near pool table, 2 black males, 1 white female. Patron with phone who attempted to record, Asian male, early 20s. Inside her apartment, Renee went straight to her laptop. The department's internal complaint portal glowed blue in the darkness of her living room. Her fingers moved across the keyboard with mechanical precision, translating her verbal notes into official language. She checked her watch. 11:47 p.m. Still time to file before midnight. She typed Daniel Rusk's email address into the CC field. The Internal Affairs investigator needed to see this immediately, before reports could be sanitized or evidence could disappear. She listed every name, every witness, every detail that could be verified. As she wrote, her phone buzzed with incoming texts. Colleagues checking in, their concern wrapped in warnings. "Heard what happened. You okay? Might want to let this cool down. Those guys have friends in high places. Just saying. Why make waves? You're on track for deputy chief." Renee ignored them all. By morning, the whispers had started. She heard them in the hallways, saw them in sideways glances. Captain Lawson lost it over nothing. She was drunk. They were just doing their jobs. Always playing the race card. Her inbox pinged with new messages. First, The official incident reports from Brenner and Fitch, copied to her as the complainant. Their version read like fiction. Subject appeared intoxicated and became combative when asked for identification. Made unsubstantiated claims of being law enforcement. Refused lawful commands. Officers maintained professional demeanor throughout interaction. Renee's jaw tightened as she read their lies. She immediately submitted a request for body cam footage, knowing it would show a very different story. The response came within hours. Footage under technical review. Estimated processing time 30 to 60 days. Of course, she'd expected nothing less. A knock at her office door made her look up. Lieutenant Marcus Hayes, a longtime colleague, stepped in and closed the door behind him. "Renee," he said, his voice low, "this is getting political. Chief's office is watching. Maybe we could handle this informally? They assaulted me, Marcus, in public, on camera. I know, but—" He shifted uncomfortably. "These things have a way of reflecting badly on everyone. Department doesn't need the attention right now." "The department needs exactly this attention," Renee said. "How many others have they done this to? How many times has Hines covered for them?" Marcus sighed. "Just think about the bigger picture." "I am thinking about the bigger picture. That's why I'm not letting this go." After he left, Renee opened a new document. The Civilian Review Board complaint form was longer, more detailed. It would create an external record that couldn't be buried in departmental bureaucracy. She filled it out methodically, attaching her initial complaint, the conflicting incident reports, and the body cam delay notice. Her phone buzzed again. Another text. "Heard Brenner's uncle is tight with the police union president. Watch yourself." Renee added that to her growing documentation. Every threat, every warning, every attempt at intimidation became another piece of evidence. She noted times, dates, names, building a paper trail that couldn't be ignored or explained away. The Civilian Review Board submission form glowed on her screen, cursor blinking on the Submit button. Renee knew what would happen next. The retaliation would start subtle. Schedule changes, equipment problems, backup arriving just a little slower on her calls. Then it would escalate. She looked at the Submit button for a long moment. Then she clicked it. The fluorescent lights in the Internal Affairs conference room cast harsh shadows across the polished table. Renee sat straight-backed in her chair, facing Daniel Rusk and Sarah Martinez, the department attorney. Her case file lay open between them, thick with papers, but somehow feeling thin on substance. Rusk cleared his throat, shuffling through documents with methodical precision. His reading glasses caught the overhead glare as he looked up. "Captain Lawson, we've identified several procedural concerns in your complaint. The detention appears to have lacked proper cause. The search posture was non-standard. There was inappropriate interference with civilian recording devices." Renee felt a flutter of hope in her chest. Finally, someone seeing the truth. "The unprofessional conduct is also noted," Rusk continued, his voice maintaining its careful neutrality. "Officers Brenner and Fitch failed to follow several key protocols for civilian interaction." Martinez nodded along, her pen tapping against her legal pad. "These are serious procedural violations." "They're criminal violations," Renee corrected, keeping her voice level. "Assault under color of authority. Civil rights violations. Witness intimidation." Rusk's expression shifted slightly, almost imperceptible, but Renee caught it. That slight tightening around the eyes that meant bad news was coming. "Given the sensitivity of the situation," he said, "we believe a measured approach would be most appropriate. Officer coaching, additional training, counseling sessions to address underlying behavioral issues." "Coaching?" Renee interrupted. The word tasted bitter. "They publicly humiliated and assaulted a superior officer. They used their badges to commit crimes." Martinez leaned forward, her face arranged in what she probably thought was a sympathetic expression. "Captain Lawson, we understand this has been traumatic for you. The department is prepared to approve paid administrative leave, give you time to process." "I don't need time to process. I need consequences for criminal conduct." "Without clear video evidence," Rusk began. "The body cams worked fine until they didn't," Renee cut in. "Convenient timing." "Technical issues do occur," Martinez said smoothly. "Without that footage, we have to rely on witness statements, and witnesses can be unreliable. Tessa Ward was behind the bar all night. She saw everything." Renee pulled out her notes. "The Asian man whose phone they knocked down, he was wearing a blue jacket, around 25 years old. There were at least 15 other patrons in direct line of sight. Rusk made a show of writing this down, but his pen barely moved. We'll certainly follow up with any cooperative witnesses." "You mean you'll intimidate them until they stop cooperating?" Renee said. Martinez's smile tightened. "That's quite an accusation, Captain." "It's quite a cover-up, Counselor." The fluorescent lights hummed in the silence that followed. Renee watched Rusk shuffle papers again, avoiding her eyes. She'd seen this dance before. The slow walk investigation, the witnesses who suddenly couldn't remember details, the evidence that became unavailable. Death by procedure. "Captain Lawson," Rusk said finally, "these cases are complex. Without clear video documentation, the documentation exists. You're choosing not to find it. And with conflicting accounts," he continued, as if she hadn't spoken. "We have to be thorough. These investigations take time." "Time for memories to fade?" Renee asked. "Time for witnesses to disappear? Time for the news cycle to move on?" Martinez closed her notebook. "We understand you're frustrated." "I'm not frustrated. I'm angry. There's a difference. Perhaps that's why some time off would be beneficial," Martinez pressed. "Clear your head. Let the process work." "The process is the problem," Renee said. "And we all know it." Rusk removed his glasses, polishing them with deliberate care. "Captain, no one is dismissing your experience, but formal discipline requires a certain burden of proof. Criminal charges even more so. Without supporting evidence." "The evidence exists," Renee repeated. "You're just not looking for it. We're following established protocols, the same protocols that protect bad officers and bury misconduct." Martinez's pen stopped tapping. "That's not a constructive approach, Captain. Neither is pretending this system works." Rusk replaced his glasses, his movements still careful and precise. "We'll continue our investigation according to department policy. In the meantime, I strongly recommend you consider the administrative leave option. It would give everyone space to—" "To what?" Renee asked. "To pretend this never happened? To wait until I give up?" "To handle this professionally," Martinez finished firmly. Renee stood, gathering her papers. "Nothing about this has been professional. Not the assault, not the cover-up, and not this meeting." "Captain," Rusk started. "You'll have my formal response to any findings through appropriate channels," Renee said, moving toward the door. "And my lawyer's response, if necessary." She left them sitting under those harsh fluorescent lights, their faces caught between concern and calculation. The hallway felt cooler, clearer. Her phone buzzed as she reached her office. A new email notification. The message was brief, bureaucratic. After careful review of available evidence, no disciplinary action recommended at this time. Investigation status. Closed pending new information. Renee sank into her couch, remote in hand, flipping through local news channels. Her apartment felt too quiet, too empty. The weekend's events played on loop in her mind. The hands on her body, the sneering faces, the system's quick pivot to protect its own. She hadn't slept much. Channel 4's evening news flickered across her screen. The anchor's serious expression caught her attention as familiar footage appeared. Harbor Tap's exterior, police lights strobing against brick walls. A reported disturbance at a local bar this weekend led to what police sources describe as a misunderstanding involving an unidentified woman, the anchor read smoothly. According to witnesses, officers responded professionally to escalating behavior. Renee's jaw clenched. The segment cut to a blurred figure, voice distorted. She was argumentative from the start, refusing basic commands. The officers showed remarkable restraint. Remarkable restraint? Renee muttered, her fingers tight around the remote. She recognized the language, carefully chosen words that painted her as the aggressor while praising police patience. It was narrative control in real time, and it was working. The segment ended quickly, sliding into weather updates as if nothing significant had happened. As if she hadn't been publicly humiliated and assaulted by officers sworn to protect and serve. Her phone buzzed. Unknown number. Renee almost ignored it, but something made her check the message. "This is Tessa Ward from Harbor Tap. A regular named Marty Keene has video from inside the bar. He got it before they started stopping people from filming. Said I should tell you." Renee sat up straight, heart suddenly pounding. She typed back, "Where is he now?" "Still here. Says he'll wait if you want to come." Renee was moving before she finished reading, grabbing her keys and jacket. The drive to Harbor Tap took 11 minutes. She counted every one, gripping the wheel too tight, mind racing with possibilities. Video evidence would change everything. No wonder Internal Affairs rushed to close the case. The bar's neon signs cast red-blue shadows across the empty parking lot. A man in his 50s stood near the entrance, hands in his pockets, looking nervous. He glanced up as Renee approached. "Captain Lawson?" His voice was quiet, careful. "I'm Marty Keene." Renee nodded, studying him. "Tessa said you have footage?" "Inside my car," he said, gesturing to an old Honda Civic. "Didn't want to show it where people might see." They walked to his car. Marty's hands shook slightly as he pulled out his phone. "I save everything to a secure cloud account," he explained. "Used to work IT, old habits." The video played on his phone screen. The angle was from a corner table. Marty must have propped his phone against something to film discreetly. The quality was surprisingly clear. There she was at the bar. Brenner and Fitch entering. The initial approach that wasn't really an approach, it was a hunt. The audio picked up their voices perfectly. "Looking kinda lost there, sweetheart." Brenner's tone dripped with false concern. "Maybe she's waiting for someone to show her where she belongs." Fitch's laugh carried clearly. Renee watched herself maintain composure as they crowded closer. The camera caught Brenner blocking her exit path, Fitch's unwanted touches, the escalating threats wrapped in policy language. "Just doing our job, making sure everyone's safe." But the audio caught their real tone, casual cruelty backed by absolute certainty. They were untouchable. The footage showed the moment they forced her outside. Brenner's hand gripping her arm too hard, Fitch smirking as he knocked phones away from filming bystanders. "This is why they rushed to close the investigation," Renee said quietly. "This makes it impossible to bury." Marty nodded. "I can give you the original file, and I'll make a statement about what I saw if you want." "I do want that," Renee said. "But you should know. They might retaliate. Come after your job, your family, anything they can use." "I know." Marty met her eyes. "But some things matter more than being safe." They spent the next 20 minutes transferring the file and writing out his statement. Marty's account was detailed, methodical. Dates, times, exact quotes, supporting details that matched the video perfectly. He signed it and had Renee witness his signature. Back in her car, Renee watched the clip one more time. The sound of Brenner's laugh filled her speakers, that entitled dismissive sound that said he owned the space and everyone in it. She'd heard that laugh too many times from too many officers. Her phone felt heavy in her hand as she pulled up her contacts. This evidence changed the game, but only if she used it right. One wrong move, and it would disappear into the same system that buried everything else. The contact list glowed in the dark car. Renee's finger hovered over a name as she considered her next move. Renee's kitchen filled with pale morning light as she sat at her table, surrounded by paper and purpose. Her coffee had gone cold, forgotten in the intensity of her focus. Her laptop screen glowed with open tabs. Department policies, civil rights statutes, city council procedures. She'd been here since 4 a.m., turning evidence into ammunition. The timeline sprawled across her left side, detailed in precise handwriting. Every interaction, every threat, every moment when procedure became punishment. Witness names filled a separate column. Tessa Ward, Marty Keene, the bystander whose phone was knocked away. She'd noted which patrol units responded, which dispatchers were on duty, which supervisors made decisions. Her phone showed the internal affairs emails, their quick dismissal preserved as proof of institutional protection. Next to it sat a thumb drive containing Marty's video, backed up in 3 different places. She wouldn't let this evidence disappear. Renee picked up her phone and dialed a number she'd researched extensively. 3 rings, then a crisp voice answered, "Simone Avery's office. This is Police Captain Renee Lawson. I need to speak with Attorney Avery about a civil rights violation. It's time-sensitive." A pause, then, "Hold, please." Moments later, a different voice, direct, focused. "Captain Lawson, this is Simone Avery. What's the situation?" Renee outlined the harbor tap incident in careful detail. The harassment, the public humiliation, the department's rush to bury it. She described the video evidence and witness statements, the pattern of behavior suggesting this wasn't isolated. "Can you come in this morning?" Simone asked. "Bring everything you have. I'll be there in an hour." While gathering her documents, Renee logged into the department system. She submitted a formal records request for Brenner and Fitch's body cam assignments, equipment checkout logs, and maintenance records. When they claimed technical failure, and they would, she'd have the paper trail. Simone's office occupied a modest building downtown, its lobby decorated with framed newspaper articles about successful accountability cases. The attorney herself stood when Renee entered. Tall, professionally dressed, with eyes that missed nothing. "Show me what you have," Simone said, gesturing to her conference room. Renee laid out her evidence methodically. Simone took notes, asked precise questions, and studied the video twice. Her expression grew harder with each viewing. "They're counting on internal channels to contain this," Simone said finally. "We need parallel pressure points, multiple angles they can't control behind closed doors." She sketched a quick diagram. Administrative complaint here, civil action here, and most importantly, a city oversight trigger that forces public documentation. "They'll retaliate," Renee said quietly. "They'll try to destroy my career." "They'll try," Simone agreed, "but quiet action guarantees burial. Public action at least gives us leverage." They spent the next hour drafting a federal complaint outline. Simone's language was precise, transforming raw events into legal framework. Fourth Amendment violations, color of law abuse, pattern and practice implications. She detailed how Brenner and Fitch's actions reflected deeper institutional problems. "I'm sending preservation letters today," Simone said, typing rapidly. "We demand they retain everything. Body camera footage, dash cams, radio traffic, dispatch logs, text messages between officers, internal emails discussing the incident. Create a legal obligation before anything mysteriously disappears." Renee nodded, then pulled up the City Council website. "Next meeting is Thursday night. Public comment requires advance registration. Perfect timing, Simone said. Once you testify, the evidence enters public record. They can't make it vanish without committing new violations. Renee began filling out the testimony request form. Her hands felt steady despite the weight of what she was starting. She typed her name, rank, and reason for speaking. To address documented civil rights violations by uniformed officers and subsequent departmental cover-up attempts. Be prepared, Simone warned. They'll attack your credibility, claim you're disgruntled, paint you as unstable or uncooperative. Standard playbook. I know, Renee said. I've watched them do it to others. She completed the form, cursor hovering over the submit button. Fear crept along her spine, not of Brenner and Fitch, but of losing the career she'd built, the chance to change things from inside. The system she still believed in, despite everything. Simone watched her silently, understanding the moment. Renee thought about other women who'd faced similar harassment, about officers who assumed their badge made them untouchable, about all the times silence protected the wrong people. The submit button clicked softly under her finger. The fear remained, but she chose it anyway. Chose the fight over the false peace of looking away. What's our next step? She asked Simone. The attorney smiled slightly. Now we make sure they can't pretend this never happened. The City Hall chambers hummed with tension as people packed the rows, their whispers echoing off marble walls. Uniformed officers lined the perimeter, arms crossed, faces neutral but eyes alert. News cameras tracked every movement while reporters scribbled in notepads, sensing something significant was about to unfold. Council Chair. Denise Rollins sat straight-backed at the center of the raised dais, her gavel poised. She surveyed the crowd with practiced patience, noting the unusual mix of faces, concerned residents, curious onlookers, and an unusually high number of police brass. This meeting of the City Council will come to order, Rollins announced, bringing the gavel down with sharp authority. The room settled into expectant silence. She consulted her agenda. First for public comment, we have Police Captain Renee Lawson. The overhead screen displayed Renee's name and title as she approached the podium. Her steps were measured, unhurried. She wore her formal uniform, captain's bars gleaming under the fluorescent lights. The room's energy shifted instantly. Officers along the walls straightened, some with confusion, others with barely concealed hostility. In the audience, residents leaned forward, sensing the unusual nature of a police captain testifying. Behind Renee, attorney Simone Avery sat in the front row, a thick binder labeled Evidence Public Record positioned prominently on her lap. Her presence alone sent a clear message. This wasn't a routine complaint. Renee adjusted the microphone, her movements calm and deliberate. Thank you, Chairwoman Rollins and council members. I'm here to address documented civil rights violations by uniformed officers and the subsequent attempt to suppress evidence of their misconduct. She began building her timeline, her voice steady and clear. Last Friday at 10:47 p.m., I entered Harbor Tap as a civilian patron. At 11:03, officers Wade Brenner and Cole Fitch arrived. By 11:05, they had targeted me for harassment. The precision of her timestamps commanded attention. This wasn't emotional testimony, it was evidence being entered into record. At 11:12, Officer Brenner physically blocked my movement while Officer Fitch made unauthorized physical contact. At 11:15, they threatened arrest for impersonating an officer when I identified myself as law enforcement. At 11:17, they forced me outside for a public search, without probable cause. Renee gestured to Simone, who approached with documents. I'm submitting multiple pieces of evidence. Security footage from Harbor Tap, captured by patron Marty Keene. A sworn statement from bartender Tessa Ward, my initial complaint, and internal affairs email dismissing the incident without investigation. Council members accepted the materials, papers rustling as they reviewed them. Rollins nodded to a technician, and the video began playing on the chamber's screens. The footage was damning in its clarity. Brenner's intimidating posture as he crowded Renee's space, Fitch's smirking touch on her arm, their mocking laughter when she identified herself, the aggressive escort toward the door. The audio captured their tone perfectly. The casual cruelty, the confidence of men certain they'd face no consequences. "People like you always think you can talk your way out," Brenner's voice sneered through the speakers. Several council members stopped taking notes, their expressions darkening as they watched. Cameras swung between the video and Renee's face, capturing her composed determination. In the back, reporters typed frantically on phones, live updating their stories. The room grew tenser with each passing moment of footage. Some officers shifted uncomfortably, while others glared at Renee with naked hostility. But she kept her focus on the council, knowing this moment would either force change or prove how deeply the protection ran. When the video ended, Renee turned to face the dais directly. "If this can happen to me, a police captain with 20 years of service, it happens to everyone." These officers felt comfortable enough to harass, threaten, and publicly humiliate someone they saw as vulnerable. When that person turned out to have rank, the department's response wasn't to address the misconduct, but to hide it. She placed her hands flat on the podium. "I submitted this evidence through proper channels. I followed procedure. The system responded by suggesting I take leave while the officers remained on duty. That's not accountability. That's institutional protection of abuse." The silence in the chamber grew heavier. Rollins studied the documents, her expression grave. Other council members whispered among themselves, gesturing at specific pages. City Attorney Calvin Dre stood from his seat near the dais, his face carefully neutral. He approached the microphone, adjusted his tie, and cleared his throat. "Given the evidence presented and the serious nature of these allegations, I am announcing that effective immediately, Officers Wade Brenner and Cole Fitch are placed on administrative leave pending criminal review." His voice carried clearly through the speakers. "This action will be entered into the public record." The announcement landed like a thunderclap. Cameras flashed, reporters rushed for the exits, racing to break the story. The officers along the walls stood frozen, their practiced neutrality cracking. But Renee kept her eyes forward, her expression unchanged. She knew this was only the first step, that the real fight would come when the system tried to wait out the publicity and return to business as usual. The gavel cracked again as Rollins called for order amid the growing commotion. The public record had been made. Now came the work of making it matter. Renee's apartment felt unusually quiet after the charged atmosphere of City Hall. She kicked off her dress shoes by the door, her feet grateful for relief after hours of standing. The formal uniform jacket came next, draped carefully over a kitchen chair. Her phone buzzed, Simone Avery's number lighting up the screen. Renee hit the speaker button and sank into a chair at her kitchen table. "You saw the news?" "Already trending," Simone confirmed, her voice crisp through the speaker. "Administrative leave is making headlines, but we both know that's just optics. They're hoping public attention will fade while they investigate." Renee rubbed her temples. "Standard playbook. Wait it out, then quietly reinstate. Which is exactly why we're not giving them time to bury this." Papers rustled on Simone's end. "I've drafted the civil notice of claim against the city. We need to file everything while the council meeting is still fresh. Hit them with procedure before they can circle the wagons." Renee pulled her laptop closer, opening a fresh document. "Walk me through it. What's first?" "Criminal complaint to the DA's intake unit," Simone said. "We focus on specific charges: assault under color of authority, unlawful detention, civil rights violations. Keep it dry and factual. Timestamps, actions, witnesses, No emotional language. Renee's fingers moved across the keyboard, transcribing each element with the same precision she'd used for countless police reports. She detailed Brenner's physical intimidation, Fitch's unwanted touching, the forced movement outside, the unlawful search, each action tied to specific criminal statutes. Good, Simone continued. Now, attach Marty's video file and the sworn statements. Make sure the metadata shows original timestamps. We want chain of custody rock solid. Renee organized the evidence files, labeling each one clearly. Tessa Ward's statement described the escalating harassment from behind the bar. Marty Keene's footage captured the officer's sneering tone and physical threats. Together, they created an unbreakable timeline. Next is the civil notice, Simone said. We're claiming damages against the city for failure to train, failure to supervise, and pattern of discrimination. Include the internal affairs dismissal email, shows they had notice and chose not to act. The kitchen clock ticked past midnight as they worked. Renee's coffee went cold, untouched. She focused on building the case piece by piece, making each element impossible to dismiss. The civil claim outlined systemic failures, not just two officers' actions, but the department's protection of those actions. Now the federal civil rights complaint, Simone directed. This triggers outside jurisdiction, takes it beyond local control. Detail every Fourth Amendment violation. Unreasonable seizure, excessive force, suppression of witness documentation. Renee's typing slowed, ensuring every word was precise. The federal filing was their strongest lever, a way to force oversight that couldn't be handled quietly in-house. She included the council meeting video, showing how quickly the department moved to administrative leave once the evidence became public. Last piece, Simone said. Evidence preservation demand. We want everything locked down before anything can conveniently malfunction. Renee drafted the preservation notice, listing every category of evidence. Body cam footage from both officers, dash cam video, dispatch recordings, radio traffic logs, shift assignments, supervisor emails, internal messages, disciplinary histories. The demand created a legal obligation. Any missing evidence would now constitute obstruction. Remember, Simone emphasized, no press statements, no social media posts, no informal comments to anyone. Let the filings speak. The system knows how to deflect outrage, but it has to respond to procedure. Copy that, Renee said, a hint of dry humor in her voice. I know how to work a chain of command. She reviewed each document one final time, checking citations and attachments. The criminal complaint outlined clear violations of state law. The civil notice established municipal liability. The federal filing triggered constitutional scrutiny. The preservation demand protected their evidence. Together, they created overlapping pressure that couldn't be ignored. Send them all tonight, Simone advised. Don't give them time to prepare narratives. And Renee, she paused, be ready for pushback. This is going to make people uncomfortable. I'm counting on it, Renee said quietly. She submitted the criminal complaint first, watching the confirmation appear in her inbox. The civil notice went next, properly served to the city clerk's office. The federal filing took longer, the system processing each attachment. Finally, she sent the preservation demand to every required department and supervisor. The clock read 1:03 a.m. when the last confirmation arrived. Renee closed her laptop and stood, stretching muscles stiff from hours of focused work. She walked to her bedroom, set her alarm for her regular shift, and laid out a fresh uniform. Tomorrow she would go to work like any other day. She wouldn't comment on the filings or acknowledge the stares. She would simply do her job while the machinery of legal procedure ground forward, turning evidence into consequence one document at a time. Wade Brenner slouched in his patrol car's driver's seat, the engine idling while he scrolled through his phone. The morning sun glinted off the gas station's windows, but he barely noticed. His thumbs flew across the screen, snickering at each message that popped up. "Did you see her face at that council meeting?" he typed to Fitch. "Standing there all serious, like anyone gives a care." The reply came instantly. "LOL, acting like she's filing for the Supreme Court or something." Brenner took a long sip of convenience store coffee, still grinning. The administrative leave felt more like a paid vacation. A standard response he'd seen dozens of times before. Nothing ever stuck. His phone buzzed again. "She really thought that little bar video was going to do something," Fitch wrote. "Like we haven't dealt with evidence before." "Right?" Brenner replied. "So cute when they think following procedure matters. How many complaints you got in your file now?" "Lost count, bro. Internal Affairs is probably tired of seeing my name." Brenner shifted in his seat, checking his mirrors out of habit. The gas station parking lot remained quiet. Just another boring morning on paid leave. He opened the group chat titled SHIELD Team 6 that included Sergeant Hines and Officers Marcus Davis and Tony Rivera. "Hey, Sarge," he typed. "What's the over-under on Captain Social Justice lasting another month?" Paula Hines's response was careful but clear. "Focus on following procedure. Document everything." But Davis jumped in. "My money's on a transfer to records within 60 days. Rivera added a GIF of someone filing papers into infinity. Brenner screenshot the exchange and sent it to Fitch privately. "See? Even the brass knows how this ends." "We should help it along, though," Fitch replied. "Start some rumors about her stability. You know how they love a good wellness check on the troubled ones." Brenner's grin widened. "Already got some ideas. Remember that domestic call last month? The one with the crazy lady? Could probably copy that report format." "Perfect," Fitch wrote. "Question her judgment. Suggest she's unstable from job stress. Works every time. Plus, my body cam was totally malfunctioning that night at the bar." Brenner typed. "Such a shame about these technical issues lately." "Same here, bro. Equipment's just not reliable these days." Across town, Renee sat across from Marty Keene in a quiet corner booth at Dale's Diner. Sunlight streamed through large windows, highlighting the steam rising from their coffee cups. A manila envelope sat between them. "I need you to read this carefully," Renee said, sliding the affidavit across the table. "It has to be exact." Marty adjusted his reading glasses and leaned forward. His eyes moved methodically down the page, taking in each detailed paragraph about the night at Harbor Tap. The document outlined when he started recording, how he preserved the video file, and who had access to it since. "This part here about the timestamp," he said, tapping the paper. "You want the exact minute?" "Everything matters," Renee replied. "Chain of custody means tracking every step, every transfer, every viewing. We need to show this evidence wasn't altered." Marty nodded and continued reading. His hand trembled slightly as he turned the page. He'd never signed a legal document this important before, but his voice was steady when he spoke. "It's all accurate," he said. "Every detail matches what I remember." Renee passed him a pen. "Sign and date each page. Initial any corrections. We'll have it notarized before you leave." While Marty signed, Renee's phone buzzed with a text from Simone. "Council recording secured. Subpoenas drafted for all electronic communications between named officers." "Good," Renee typed back. "Any pushback?" "Not yet. They're probably still confident nothing will stick. That works in our favor." Renee watched Marty carefully date each signature. This wasn't about revenge or even justice anymore. It was about procedure. Every document, every signature, every preservation order created another thread in a web of accountability. She didn't need to chase them. The evidence would do that on its own. Marty slid the signed affidavit back across the table. What happens next? The system works through the documents, Renee said. Every filing triggers requirements. Every requirement creates a record. Every record builds the case. Sounds slow, Marty said. Renee allowed herself a small smile. Slow is thorough. Thorough is permanent. She checked her watch. Almost time for her next meeting. The affidavit went into her briefcase alongside copies of the criminal complaint, civil notice, and federal filing. Each piece of paper represented another step forward, another official record that couldn't be erased. At 6:47 p.m., while Brenner and Fitch were still exchanging confident texts about their untouchability, an email arrived in Simone Avery's inbox. The subject line read simply, "Evidence of coordination." The anonymous sender had attached multiple screenshots from the officers' group chat, dozens of messages showing them plotting to discredit Renee, coordinating their technical glitches, and documenting their casual dismissal of accountability. Each image included timestamps, user IDs, and participant lists. The steps of City Hall blazed under the midday sun as reporters jostled for position, their cameras trained on the podium. Behind the press corps, protesters filled the plaza, their signs rising like accusations, "Badge immunity," and "Arrest corrupt cops." The emergency briefing had been called less than an hour after Simone Avery's legal filing hit the public record. Mayor Catherine Walsh gripped the podium edges, her usual confidence wavering as she faced the crowd. "The screenshots submitted to the court today are deeply troubling," she began, voice tight. "They appear to show officers discussing retaliatory actions against a superior and coordinating to obstruct an investigation." Camera shutters clicked rapidly. In the second row, Channel 4's veteran reporter Sandra Mills called out, "What about the references to deliberately malfunctioning body cameras?" The mayor's knuckles whitened. "All equipment logs and maintenance records are being reviewed by—" "The screenshots show officers joking about technical issues," another reporter cut in. "Will there be criminal charges for evidence tampering?" District Attorney Marcus Coleman stepped to the microphone, his dark suit pristine despite the heat. "My office has opened a criminal review into potential obstruction of justice, witness intimidation, and civil rights violations. We're working closely with federal authorities given the nature of—" "What about Sergeant Hines?" someone shouted. The group chat shows she knew about the retaliation plans. At the edge of the crowd, Renee stood quietly in her formal uniform, watching the scene unfold. She hadn't leaked anything or called for attention. The evidence was doing exactly what evidence should do, creating unavoidable pressure for accountability. Simone Avery stepped forward, her navy blazer stark against the white marble steps. "The screenshots were submitted through proper legal channels as part of our federal filing. They show a pattern of behavior that extends beyond the initial incident." She held up a thick document. "We've also obtained body cam status logs that directly contradict the officers' written statements about equipment issues that night." Internal Affairs Director James Morton hurried to the microphone, sweat beading on his forehead. "We're releasing all body cam maintenance records from the past 6 months for full transparency." "Why weren't these discrepancies flagged during your initial review?" Simone asked, her voice carrying across the plaza. Morton fumbled with his papers. "Our preliminary investigation focused on immediate witness statements and—" "So you ignored documentary evidence that would have exposed the false statements?" Simone pressed. The crowd murmured. Renee maintained her position, hands clasped behind her back, letting the momentum build naturally. She'd learned that silence could be more powerful than speeches. Inside City Hall, Sergeant Paula Hines sat stiffly in front of the command staff, trying to explain away her presence in the group chat. "I was attempting to maintain a de-escalating presence in the conversation," she insisted. To prevent more aggressive suggestions, Deputy Chief Victor Torres cut her off. You were legally required to report threats of retaliation against a superior officer. Instead, you participated in discussions about discrediting her. I never actively supported. Your passive presence enabled it, Torres snapped. The timestamps show you reading messages about fabricating wellness concerns and coordinating technical failures. You took no action. Heinz's face tightened. I was trying to handle it internally. That excuse is exactly why we're under federal scrutiny now. Outside, the press conference had devolved into rapid-fire questions about oversight and accountability. Local news vans lined the street, their satellite dishes reaching skyward like metal trees. Veterans groups had arrived carrying signs about honor and duty. Residents shared stories of similar encounters that had been buried or ignored. Renee's phone buzzed in her pocket. Another blocked number. She'd received dozens of threatening calls since the filing went public. Heavy breathing, muffled curses, promises of consequences. She recorded each one, logged the time, and forwarded them to Simone. Every threat became another piece of evidence. The mayor was trying to regain control of the narrative. We take these allegations extremely seriously. Then why did it take public exposure to trigger action? Sandra Mills demanded. Captain Lawson filed multiple internal complaints that were dismissed. The investigation process requires. The screenshots show officers bragging about how complaints never stick, another reporter called out. Is that the process working? Simone stepped forward again, her voice cutting through the chaos. We've filed for emergency judicial oversight of all department records related to this case and similar incidents over the past 5 years. She held up another document. The court has just granted our request. As of this moment, destroying or altering any potential evidence is contempt of court, a criminal offense. The announcement hit like a thunderclap. No more missing footage, no more vanishing emails, no more rewritten reports. The system's favorite tools for burying misconduct were suddenly unavailable. Mayor Walsh's face paled as her phone buzzed. She glanced at the screen, then stepped back from the podium. The Department of Justice was calling. Renee remained motionless in her dress uniform, watching reactions ripple through the crowd. She didn't need to speak or point fingers. The evidence was doing that, creating consequences that couldn't be badged away or buried in bureaucracy. Thunder rolled overhead as storm clouds gathered. A few raindrops spattered the marble steps, but no one moved. The press kept shouting questions. The protesters kept raising their signs. And the truth kept working its way through the system, one documented fact at a time. By sunset, City Hall's lights cast long shadows across the plaza as clerks hurried to comply with the preservation order. Every email, text, body cam file, radio log, and internal memo was now legally protected. The machinery of accountability had engaged, powered by evidence instead of outrage. The courthouse hallway hummed with tension as Wade Brenner and Cole Fitch walked in, their polished shoes clicking against marble. Their suits couldn't hide their discomfort, like children dressed up for punishment. No swagger now, no easy smirks, just stiff shoulders and darting eyes. Judge Miranda Chen presided over Courtroom 3A, her reputation for precise procedure evident in the careful stack of documents before her. The gallery packed tight with reporters, activists, and off-duty officers. Everyone leaned forward as she began. The court has reviewed extensive evidence submitted in support of probable cause, Judge Chen stated, her voice clear and measured. We'll examine each element systematically. The courtroom screen lit up with a still from the Harbor Tap video. Brenner's face tightened as he watched himself loom over Renee's seat. The timestamp glowed in the corner. 10:47 p.m. The footage demonstrates a clear pattern of escalation, the judge continued. Officer Brenner, you physically blocked exit paths while Officer Fitch initiated unnecessary contact. Both actions constitute unlawful detention under color of authority. Brenner's attorney, James Morton, rose quickly. Your Honor, this was merely a routine interaction that suffered from miscommunication. Counsel, Judge Chen cut in, the timestamps tell a different story. At 10:52, your client explicitly threatened arrest for a fabricated charge. At 10:54, Officer Fitch radioed for backup despite no legitimate law enforcement purpose. The video shows coordinated intimidation, not miscommunication. Morton deflated. Behind him, Fitch's complexion turned ashen as the footage continued playing. Every smirk, every threatening lean, every mockery now preserved in perfect clarity. District Attorney Marcus Coleman approached the podium. The people are charging both defendants with unlawful detention under color of authority, official misconduct, and evidence tampering related to subsequent false reporting and attempted concealment. He held up a thick folder. We've obtained dispatch logs showing the defendants requested backup before any legitimate cause existed. Their written statements claim equipment malfunctions that maintenance records directly contradict, and their own messages in the group chat, he paused, letting it sink in, demonstrate consciousness of guilt through planned obstruction. The evidence mounted methodically. Tessa Ward's sworn statement about witnessing the harassment. Marty Keene's affidavit authenticating the video. Internal Affairs emails showing delayed responses and buried complaints. The group chat screenshots revealing casual discussion of evidence tampering. Outside the courthouse, Mayor Catherine Walsh stood at a podium while City Council Chair Denise Rollins waited her turn. Camera crews jostled for position as Walsh announced the administrative actions. Effective immediately, Officers Brenner and Fitch are terminated from the police department, pending criminal proceedings, Walsh declared, her usual polish cracking slightly. Additionally, Sergeant Paula Hines has been terminated for failure of supervision and documented participation in retaliatory actions. Rollins stepped forward, her voice steady. The Council has formally requested a Department of Justice pattern and practice investigation based on evidence suggesting these were not isolated incidents. We're implementing immediate reforms to body cam procedures, complaint tracking, and supervisory oversight. Back in the courtroom, Judge Chen reviewed the probable cause determination. The evidence demonstrates not only the initial misconduct, but coordinated efforts to obstruct investigation through false statements, manipulated evidence, and attempted witness intimidation. She looked directly at Brenner and Fitch. Your badges granted you authority with the understanding it would be used to protect, not intimidate. The evidence shows you violated that trust deliberately and repeatedly. Fitch seemed to shrink in his chair. Brenner's jaw worked silently as his carefully constructed world crumbled under the weight of documented facts. The court finds probable cause for all charges, Judge Chen declared. Defendants will be taken into custody for processing. Bail hearing set for Thursday. Court deputies approached with handcuffs. The gallery watched in tense silence as the officers who had so casually abused their power now faced its legitimate application. Renee sat perfectly still in the third row, her face carefully neutral. She'd seen too many cases collapse from premature celebration. Evidence had brought them here, and evidence would carry it through. Not emotion, not vengeance, not triumph. As deputies led him toward processing, Brenner turned. His eyes found Renee in the gallery, and something shifted in his expression. Maybe he finally understood. She hadn't orchestrated his downfall. His own certainty had done that. The unshakable belief that rules didn't apply to him, that power meant impunity, that truth could be buried under badges and bravado. The cuffs clicked shut. The deputies guided him forward. The courtroom doors swung closed with a heavy finality. In the gallery, reporters scribbled furiously while activists whispered, and off-duty officers sat in uncomfortable silence. The evidence remained on the screens, timestamp after timestamp, document after document, truth that couldn't be intimidated or ignored. Outside, protesters cheered the termination announcements. News helicopters circled overhead. Social media exploded with clips from the hearing. But inside courtroom 3A, there was only the quiet rustle of papers as Judge Chen organized the case files, each page another brick in the wall of accountability that had finally, irrevocably, trapped the untouchable. Harbor Tap glowed softly in the evening darkness, its neon sign casting familiar blue shadows across the parking lot. Renee Lawson stood outside for a moment, hands in her jacket pockets, watching patrons come and go through the frosted glass door. 3 weeks had transformed this place from a site of humiliation into something else, a marker of change. She pushed through the door, the warmth and murmur of conversation washing over her. No uniform tonight, just jeans and a sweater. No badge locked in the glove box. She didn't need either anymore. The corner stool waited like a quiet challenge. The same spot where Brenner had crowded her, where Fitch had touched her arm without permission, where their badges had been weapons instead of shields. Renee walked toward it deliberately, each step reclaiming ground. Heads turned as she passed, not with the fearful glances from that night, but with recognition and something deeper. A middle-aged man nodded respectfully. 2 women at a high-top table whispered and smiled. The energy had shifted from tension to acknowledgement. Tessa Ward looked up from wiping glasses, her face brightening. She grabbed a glass without hesitation and drew a perfect draft beer, setting it in front of Renee's chosen seat. "Captain?" Tessa said warmly, then corrected herself. "Sorry, Commander now, right?" Renee settled onto the stool, allowing herself a small smile. "Just Renee is fine, especially here." "Well, just Renee," Tessa leaned in slightly, lowering her voice. "Thank you for not letting them bury it internally, for making it stick." The bartender's words carried the weight of someone who'd seen too many incidents disappear into the machinery of bureaucratic protection. Renee nodded, understanding the gratitude went beyond her specific case. The TV mounted above the bar played the evening news on mute. Closed captioning scrolled across footage of City Hall, where Mayor Walsh announced expanded federal oversight of the department. The camera panned to show Renee standing with other command staff as new misconduct protocols were outlined, mandatory body camera compliance, civilian review board expansion, and transparent complaint tracking. "Look at you," Tessa gestured to the screen, "making actual change happen." Renee took a slow sip of her beer, watching her on-screen self maintain professional composure, while the mayor detailed her promotion to commander of the new Integrity and Misconduct Unit. The position came with real authority, direct reporting lines, independent investigation powers, and protection from internal interference. Movement at the end of the bar caught her attention. A woman sat alone, perhaps in her 30s, nervously checking the door every few minutes. She had that hyper-aware energy Renee recognized, someone who'd learned to track exits and watch for threats. Their eyes met briefly. The woman's tension eased slightly, and she offered a small, understanding smile. It wasn't quite gratitude, but something closer to relief. Like seeing Renee claim this space made it feel safer for everyone. The bar had filled steadily while Renee sat, the Friday crowd building. Conversations flowed around her, normal and unremarkable. No one stared. No one questioned her presence. No one suggested she didn't belong. Marty Keene appeared beside her, settling his bulk onto the next stool. "Commander," he said quietly, respect evident in his tone. His video had helped break the case open, turning her word against theirs into documented fact. "Thank you again," Renee said, For saving that footage. Marty shrugged, but his expression was serious. Couldn't let them get away with it. Not again. That again hung in the air between them, heavy with meaning. How many others had faced similar treatment without the rank or resources to fight back? How many incidents had vanished into internal handling and carefully managed silence? The news switched to footage of Brenner and Fitch being processed at county jail, their faces tight with disbelief. The charges had stuck: unlawful detention, misconduct, obstruction. Sergeant Hines faced separate charges for her role in the attempted cover-up. The system that had protected them now held them accountable. A burst of laughter drew Renee's attention to a group of young women near the pool tables. They moved freely, enjoying their evening without constantly checking their surroundings. That was the real victory. Not just consequences for specific officers, but the slow restoration of safety and trust. Tessa refreshed Renee's beer without being asked, then paused. You know, some of the regulars were worried you wouldn't come back, that this place would just be that night for you. Renee traced a finger through the condensation on her glass. Can't let them have that power. Can't let them make spaces feel forbidden. She looked around the bar, at the mix of people, at the easy atmosphere, at the corner that had tried to cage her now, serving as her chosen seat. This wasn't about erasing what happened. It was about transforming it into something stronger. The TV switched to sports scores. The nervous woman at the bar's end had relaxed visibly, chatting with Tessa. Marty headed back to his regular table. The night settled into its normal rhythm, unremarkable except for what it represented. A space reclaimed, a boundary enforced, a message sent. Renee took another slow sip of her beer, feeling the weight of her new command position, of the cases waiting on her desk, of the reforms slowly taking root. She didn't need grand gestures or loud celebrations. This quiet moment said everything. She was here because she chose to be, and no one had the power to question that choice. If you enjoyed the story, leave a like to support my channel and subscribe so that you do not miss out on the next one. On the screen, I have picked 2 special stories just for you. Have a wonderful day.